by your CAL FIRE team here just a few minutes ago, and I understand that a National Guard drone, which has some scanning technology that can see through the poor air quality that limits our other air resources, it'll be flying high above the skies of Sonoma County, we hope later tonight, and will help us as we unfortunately cross our fingers and hope for no more lightning strikes. But having that technology available for immediate detection of any new starts is going to be really, really important. I want to just salute the heroes who are working on the front lines of this effort. I've been at the Emergency Operations Center in previous fires. It is the same work going on here today, but it looks entirely different. And that's the last point I want everyone to understand. Because of the COVID pandemic, all of this has had to be reconfigured. This place looks totally different. There are different protocols, the spacing and all of the marshaling of assets has had to be reinvented in light of this pandemic. And that applies to every aspect of how we're fighting this fire, how we're trying to protect communities and move them around and evacuate them in an orderly way. They're doing it with far less resources than you would ordinarily see in a fire of this magnitude. And so I really want to make sure that the community knows that when our first responders tell you it's time to evacuate, more than maybe even in the past, there is very little flexibility because of that shortness of resources. We really need to heed their call and follow those instructions and do our part too, because everyone is just stretched terribly thin right now. But if we all do that, I'm confident we're going to get through this, and I appreciate the chance to participate today. Thank you, Carly.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. Next up, we'd like to hear from one of our Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, Linda Hopkins.
Thank you very much, Carly. I just want to acknowledge the tremendous work that has taken place over the last 24 hours. We are seeing increased resources come in to fight these fires, as well as the tireless work of the deputies who have been out there evacuating neighborhoods, including my own. I am now one of those tens of thousands of Sonoma County residents who is under a mandatory evacuation zone, and took my 3 kids and an insane amount of staff out of my house earlier today. I've been receiving a lot of questions regarding pets and livestock, and so I want to take an opportunity to share resources regarding what to do if you are not able to evacuate with either pets or livestock. If you're leaving behind commercial livestock, you will want to reach out to the Ag Commissioner's office. And I want you to know that our amazing staff at the Ag Commission are working through the weekend to try to provide these resources to the community. The phone number there is 565-2371, or you can email them at sonomaag@sonoma-county.org. And they're checking that email and trying to get caught up every 2 hours. Now, those leaving pets behind should be calling Sonoma County Animal Services at 707-565-7100. You can also email SCASD dispatch, SCAS dispatch at sonoma-county.org. You can also actually call the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office dispatch at 565-2121. And I do want to acknowledge, as one of the members of our local air district boards, that air quality has been poor today. So trying to stay inside and keep your air purifiers if you happen to have one running. Stay safe, everybody, and thank you so much to everyone who has heeded those mandatory evacuation orders. It is absolutely critical. Even if you do not see the flames from your neighborhood, even if you do not feel like they are a threat, there is a reason that CAL FIRE is making these operational decisions, and they need to have roads clear and people out so that our firefighters can keep doing their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Hopkins. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Commander Kavanaugh to give a situational update.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you once again for having me on these calls. I think they're important for the information to get out to the public and for any questions that we may answer. A little update this afternoon on the Walbridge fire is we're sitting at 50,000 as of this morning on the 209 reports that we have at 0600. We're sitting at 50,000 acres, just over 50,000 acres, 0% containment. On the Myers fire, actually that shrunk down with better accurate reporting this morning, and that's down at 2,345 acres. We're feeling pretty optimistic about the Myers fire and getting that wrapped up. We do have some information on the Myers. We did have 3 residents confirmed that were destroyed and 2 outbuildings for a total of 5 on the Myers incidents today. Couple more things on a bigger picture, and then we'll get back to specifically here in the Walbridge and Sonoma County. Right now, as of this morning, the entire incident, the LNU complex was sitting at 314,207 acres, which also makes this the second largest wildland incident in state history. We're sitting at 15% containment on this thing. We have a total of 560 structures that have been confirmed destroyed, and 125 as of this morning. There's ongoing damage assessment that is going on that takes some time. We do have damage assessment teams that are spread out through the entire complex, counting those numbers, and we try to get those numbers, and we need to get those accurate. So it does take time, and so you're going to see a rise and spike in those numbers as we move forward. A couple of good notes to point out, though. As of this morning, we have our operational briefing at 0700. We actually had about 1,000 person jump in personnel this morning. As of this morning, we have 1,429 people assigned to the incident. That number includes somebody just like me, so it's just not people on the fire line. But what I would like to talk about is back to the Walbridge with some numbers on the Walbridge incident alone today. This morning for the crews going out, we had 51 fire engines assigned to the Walbridge. We had 6 hand crews, 12 water tenders, 23 dozers, and 6 falling modules to go out and start take care of trees. For a fire of this size, that is not a whole lot of resources. And we have that on the entire complex that we have as we move around the entire thing. We are working on trying to get those resources in. We have out-of-state resources that are arriving. We have National Guard assets that we're using. Today, though, real quick, and then I'm going to try, hopefully Chief Nichols is on and he can give an operational briefing, but we had the inversion today, and so we only got about 4 hours of flight time as of earlier this afternoon for aircraft. There's pretty much a smoke inversion over Northern California right now. That's limiting the aircraft use. That's just Mother Nature's, and not a lot we can do about that as we move on. But as the smoke clears and the skies open up, we'll definitely get our aircraft back on as soon as we can. For now, I'd like to turn over, I think, if Chief Nichols is on for an operational update.
Thank you, Commander. I actually don't see Chief Nichols on at this point. I'll keep my eyes peeled for him and we'll get him in if he's able to jump in. At this point, let's see, I want to turn it over to Director of Emergency Management, Chris Godley. Chris, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Godley here at the Emergency Operations Center. Just a few highlights for you in response to the evolution of the fire and the potential fire behavior. The response has been, of course, to issue additional warnings and orders for Sonoma County residents in both the eastern and southern portions of the fire set. At this time, it brings us to a total of 34 zones, if you would, that have received either warnings or orders. For warnings, we have 24,810 residents under warning. For orders, and that includes Healdsburg, 24,810. For orders, we have 16,091 residents under orders. That's a total of almost 41,000 residents at this time in Sonoma County under warnings or orders. Interestingly, those zones comprise approximately 32% of the county's total landmass geographically. Also, in response to the fire, of course, the use of alert and warning systems, given the significant number of zones that had to be alerted today, there has been a challenge in running all these serially. It's taken us quite a while to get all the alerts and the warnings issued to the community, but all of those were completed successfully at this time. Temporary evacuation point remains at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds and also a co-located shelter. Our shelter population last night was approximately 97 total. Other shelters have been prepared and will be standing by should we need to make use of those systems. In terms of medical and public health, there's significant efforts again to reinforce and ensure that shelter populations remain safe, as well as COVID protections remaining in place throughout the county for both our first responders and our community members. In terms of public information, we've had a significant increase in the interest and communications with our public via social media, Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor. Also, SoCoEmergency.org has been significantly popular, especially because of the map set. Since the fire started 4 days ago, we've had 1.7 million views of that website by approximately 430,000 unique users. And that concludes my formal briefing at this point, with the exception that internally, I would also mention, I think, that we have been asked by the state of California to prepare what's called an initial damage estimate, or IDE. It's a standard process. Once you proclaim an emergency, the state asks you within 72 hours to give them an approximate estimation of the impact to your public agencies, both in terms of potential damages as well as increased response costs. We have completed the calculations for that initial damage estimate, but it's important to note this does not include the impact to the actual community, homes, residents, businesses. This is only looking at public infrastructure, roads, as well as increased response costs. That initial damage estimate at this point is $18.1 million, and additional details will be provided and breakdowns will be provided in writing through the public information officer. Our current focus is, in addition to the response to the changing fire set, as Chief Kavanaugh looked at, is the potential need to adjust to what the new weather system may bring to us in terms of both lightning strikes and affecting the fire behavior itself. Recovery planning is underway at this point, including damage assessment, debris management, watershed management, community support integration with donations, as well as addressing the big question of repopulation. It's only tentatively underway at this point. We're still focused on the immediate life safety threat that the fire poses to the community. That concludes my remarks.
Chris, thank you. Appreciate it. At this time, we'll go to Sergeant Juan Valencia, Public Information Officer with the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, for an update on evacuations.
Hi, Carly. Thank you. Sergeant Juan Valencia, Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. This morning we had a handful of evacuations and warnings being issued. Some of the evacuation orders were for the area of Dry Creek, up to past Lake Sonoma, up to the city of Cloverdale. Cloverdale is not included. That is a city. It's county areas that were issued an order. We also issued an evacuation order for the northwest part of Windsor, evacuation warning for the northwest part of Windsor. As always, we just want to remind people to have things ready, have a bag ready, have medication if needed, clothing, just be ready to go. It sounds like the weather has a lot to play with it. We're working closely in collaboration with CAL FIRE to issuing those orders out. Our biggest priority is keeping the public safe. For example, yesterday, Henry 1 rescued 2 Marin County firefighters that were stuck in a fire. They were not able to get out. Henry 1 rescued them. If it wasn't for Henry 1, they would have basically probably been burned or could have died. So we just want to let you guys know how dangerous these fires are, and that's why we are issuing these orders of evacuation or warnings. So we just want to keep you guys safe. I have nothing else to report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. At this time, I'd like to go to Incident PIO Susie Brady with CAL FIRE. Susie?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Susie Brady. I'm one of the information officers for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 2. Just like my partner said, we want to remind folks we're not out of the woods. We're still on the fire front, so we want to make sure that everyone has their stuff ready to go. Make sure you have your bags. Make sure you guys are registered for the reverse 911 systems, the NIXLs. Make sure that you know how to get out of your residence and where are you going to go and how are you going to notify your loved ones. We also want to remind folks that you can follow us on our social media platforms, either on CAL FIRE or at CAL FIRE LNU on Facebook or Twitter, as well as we do have a 24-hour fire information line, which is area code 707-967-4207. And if anybody has any questions or concerns at any time, please do not hesitate to call us. That phone line is staffed, like I said, 24 hours a day, and we're here to make sure we can get our residents back into their homes as soon as possible. That's all I have, Carly.
Great. Thank you so much. Great update. I'd like to go now to Sonoma County Supervisor James Gore. Supervisor Gore, do you have a brief update for us? Looks like you're out in the field.
I do. Thank you, Carly, and thank you everybody who's on the call today. We spent a lot of time today, first part of the day, working on clarifications and really getting people ready for the evacuation warning and the expanded orders that went out in our district, Northern Dry Creek and other areas. I want to thank Juan Valencia and their deputy sheriffs for executing those. We've, it's a good reminder to everybody. I want to back up what Juan said is that it's not just those of you who are in evacuation warnings to be prepared. It's pretty much if you're anywhere here around Sonoma County, and I would say the county wide at this point, you should be making sure you have a plan of where you're going to go. You should be making sure that you have all the important documents and medications. Why? Because with this lightning storm coming up, we could have some more starts. But specifically up here, the wind shifted to heading north today. It's pretty quiet up here on the top of Chemise. We drove up to Lake Sonoma to take a look with water agency engineers at the impact on the Sonoma County watershed. Lake Sonoma is the drinking water for 650,000 individuals. And with Sonoma Water managing it as a wholesaler, we're impacted on two different sides. On one side, there's fire danger down at our Wohler Bridge and Mirabel facility where we actually pump water out of the ground, but up at where we get the water from, where there's a lot of fire damage on the south and especially the southeast and east side of Lake Sonoma. The one thing that was nice is from the reports from our local fire chief, Jason Jenkins, with Cloverdale Fire, is that a lot of the fire, as he says, is it burnt pretty clean. It's in the undercarriage. It wasn't high and just kind of completely catastrophic. A lot of that kind of heavy burning that we've seen out on Mill Creek Road and the 7,000 plus block. We're not seeing that same thing up here around Lake Sonoma. But if we get rains, this goes back to what Chris Godley said about watershed task forces, and there's something called WERT, which is Watershed Emergency Response Teams deployed out of the state. We're going to have to be very active with engaging with the state to get the resources here because we're going to have a lot of burnt carbon going down into the watershed. There's a lot of burnt carbon down in Dry Creek itself. And what that does is it makes it much more difficult for us to protect against pathogens, viruses in the water, and other things. It kind of gums up our filtration system. So tell you the truth is being up here yesterday and up here today with the expanded air support from CAL FIRE. Thank you guys so much. I wouldn't say that there's a huge amount of optimism, but there is a sense of that we have resources that have been hitting the hills pretty hard behind me. There's quite a few residences that are covered in the pink slime that comes out from the fire retardants. And as I would say is that there's not a feeling of pure optimism, but there's a feeling of resolve and a feeling of we have resources backing us up. Also just checked in with from the correction side, a couple of the crews that have come out of some of the jail system that are working and doing hand lines. So I want to thank them and thank the governor's office for deploying them. And it's pretty much, it's go time. Every firefighter who I talk to says that we're going to be here in this situation with these fires burning for a couple weeks. I think that's an important thing for us to be prepared for. If it ends up not taking that long, fine. But recovery starts today. In the midst of the fire. That's what we've learned from 2017, 2019. Final thing I'll say is that for those communities in Cloverdale that are watchful about being put into a warning category, Hillsburg that is in a warning category, and then Windsor that partially is in a warning category, is that the sense is, we got to make sure that if we get those evacuation orders, we get out. I am in one of those areas. And the reason being is that if sparks do come in through, if the winds pick up and the winds change a little bit and we get sparks coming in, houses that don't have good vegetation management, good clearance, or good fire hardening will go up. And we can't have those folks evacuating people in the middle of the night instead of putting fires out like we had in 2017. We know it's a huge inconvenience to mobilize people in evacuations, but at the same time, we know it's the right thing to do that will never be caught flat-footed again. So resilience, resolve, and response is what we're all about up here. And I want to thank you for tuning in and let's keep going forward.
Supervisor Gore, thank you so much. Lots of good reminders for folks there. At this time,
This is Sean. Can I talk about the weather real quick? I think it's very important.
Please, yes, thank you, Chief. Commander, yes, please.
Or Supervisor Gore. And I know he's out there, and I appreciate that, Supervisor, for you being out there in your community. That's very helpful in seeing that firsthand. I would like to talk about the weather real quick and make sure that we're getting that message out. There is, starting today, we're supposed to have that change in that weather. We are seeing that south to southwest push, and with that, we are trying to focus some of those resources that are on the east side of the fire, which is the west side of Highway 101, where those orders went in today from Dry Creek and over. As the supervisor was saying, please adhere to the evacuation orders we're given, the warnings that we're given, and just be please ready to have your home, your livestock, whatever you need to be able to evacuate in a timely fashion. And I think that's going to be important. This weather pattern that's moving through, it's, sometimes it can be unpredictable, but, if we get new starts, if we get new fires, or we get new lightning with moisture, we need to be ready to go. In the mornings, like I was saying earlier, you can get up in the morning like yesterday, and it's got that marine layer in, but by the afternoon, the pattern can lift. Tomorrow could be an entirely different day when the inversion lifts. And when the inversion lifts, the fire's going to get up and burn on us. And that's just the nature of the fire behavior that we have. So I think it's real important for everybody to pay attention to that weather. We're talking about it. And if everybody is not aware, at 11 o'clock every morning, we do a press briefing that you can find on different avenues, from Facebooks to CAL FIRE, that we do, and we go through an entire operational breakdown and weather reports and for the entire incident. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Commander. Much appreciated. Good update. At this time, I'd like to go to, we have Sonoma County Supervisors Shirley Zane and David Rabbitt on the line. So Supervisor Zane, I'd like to turn over to you if you have a couple words for our community.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. First, I just want to thank all the firefighters and the sheriff and CAL FIRE and just all the great work and the people in our emergency services office, Chris Godley and his crew. Thank you for everything you're doing. The state did come up and visit our evacuation centers earlier today, and we were able to show the Lieutenant Governor around, as well as other officials from the Office of Emergency Services, which is always there for us. I did want to say also just emphasize what Supervisor Hopkins said about how unhealthy the air is. The Bay Area Air District has listed it as being very unhealthy. So if you are an older person or you have any type of pulmonary or respiratory illness, or a child with asthma, please don't go outside. But I do want to remind all of us too, is that we're still in a pandemic, so you've got to wear those masks. Now they're doing dual duty. They're not only keeping out some of the particulate matter that is very thick in the air right now and that can get into our arteries and cause all kinds of problems, but we also still need to be mindful of this pandemic that we're in. So make sure everybody's got their mask and that it's well fitted around your nose and there's no leaks there. And then I just wanted to say that people continue to have really struggling in terms of their PTSD from previous disasters. God knows we've had enough of them. And just a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, which, are horrible and feel like heart attacks. So please make use of the Sonoma County Mental Health Warm Line. It's 7 days a week from 10 to 7, and you will get a live therapist, and it's free and confidential, and you can get resources as well for other people. So please make use of that. And that phone number is 565-2652, 565-2652. I want to thank all the residents that have been evacuating, and just how important that is in terms of your safety. And again, thank all of the crew. We know firefighters are out there and they're tired and they've been working for days. And we thank all of our mutual aid that's coming around. This is not our first rodeo, but I'll tell you, every fire is different. Going through the Kincaid now and the Tubbs and now this one, they're all different. But the main thing we have to remember is to take care of one another. So make sure you check on those neighbors too. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zane. Great reminder about checking on the neighbors. Always a good thing to keep an eye out for each other during this. Supervisor Rabbit, I wanted to go to you next if you have a few quick words, and then we'll turn it over for questions.
Yeah, I just want to say again, I don't think we could thank all of our partners enough. I want to start with CAL FIRE, our own district fire agencies that are out there on the front lines, our own city municipalities, and those from outside of the county. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To our law enforcement partners, our sheriff doing a wonderful job. Thank you for that. Henry One coming in handy, obviously, and saving lives last night. Our CHP, our city partners, including my own hometown here of Petaluma, and I saw San Francisco, my former hometown, helping us out as well. I want to thank all the support staff behind them. I just want to reiterate that we all know this, and that the firefighters know it takes teamwork to make things happen. It takes teamwork to make the entire response to a fire happen, and it involves many, many people at all levels. And I just can't say thank you enough for everyone stepping up, working tirelessly to safeguard life and property. And I also want to have a special thank you to our congressmen, both Congressman Huffman, Thompson, Garamendi, I understand as well, for acting so quickly and on behalf of California and Sonoma County, Napa County, the North Bay counties, to get that federal declaration. It's something that we don't want to strive for, but when you need it, you need to get that quickly. And we thank them for their tireless work as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rabbit. At this time, we'll go ahead and start taking questions from the media. It looks like our first question here is from Mary Callahan. Mary, go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Is Chief Kavanaugh still there? It looks like Chris is still there. I'll ask Chris. I was curious to know, of the $18.1 million, can you identify sort of the major costs there? Is that mainly emergency services, fire response, and law enforcement, or what are the main costs there?
Sure. Actually, to break down some of the categories for you, we're estimating at this time approximately $4 million for debris removal. That would include debris generated by the fire, but also the removal of dead trees that pose a danger along public rights of way. We're also looking at about $5.3 million in emergency protective measures. This would include staff time, overtime, materials and supplies, as well as a significant $2.5 million for the procurement of goods and services to support emergency response and emergency medical and sheltering operations. We're also looking at the biggest number at about $8.7 million for roads and bridges. We believe that there's been significant exposure in the burned areas to the county's roadways, signage, rail guards, that kind of thing. We have not yet done inspections or actual damage calculations on the ground. Just based on historical evidence plus the information that we have, those are the figures we've arrived at in order to provide, if you would, a scope of potential impact, an idea of how big the impact may be, in order for the state of California to assess what kind of resources maybe need to be brought to bear.
Thank you. And I see that Chief Nichols has joined us. Chief Nichols, can you give us a roundup of what you're seeing on the fire in terms of activity and whether we've seen the shift in the wind yet?
So we have seen a shift in the wind. I'm currently out in Guerneville with clear blue skies and cloud cover coming into the area, which is pushing the fire in the direction that we knew it was going to go with the addition of the southwest wind. So we're in that time of the afternoon that the fire activity picks up, and as such, we are starting to see a buildup of intensity interior in the burn. With that intensity and the clear air that we've gotten with the wind coming in, all of the aerial assets here in the unit fighting the fire have been started towards Sonoma County to do what they can do out in front of this as it pushes to that northeast corner over by Lake Sonoma, to make sure that it doesn't escape the containment lines and continue burning north.
So are you seeing that the aerial support is able to fly now?
Yes, ma'am. A couple minutes ago, the air was deemed clear enough to safely get the fixed wing aircraft in to start applying a retardant to the fire front.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Next, we'll go to Ted Williams. Ted, do you please ask your question? Ted, you may have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry about that. Thanks to everybody. Chief Kavanaugh or Susie Brady or Chief Nichols, with the kind of the shifting winds and poor visibility that we've been talking about, which directions are you actually seeing the fire going, and what are your predictions? Is it going all four directions, east, west, south, and north, or just in one particular direction?
So the wind drives the fire front. Wind trumps all when it comes to wildland fire direction of its spread, but it still continues to burn on the other sides of the fire on the portions that are not in alignment with the wind, just not as intense as the portion that's in alignment with the wind. So at this point, as I said, the southwest airflow is pushing that fire back out towards the Dry Creek Valley, Warm Springs Dam area.
So we're looking at a real challenge then to the areas along Healdsburg and 101 break right at that point. And then to the south along the Russian River, are we still seeing quite a bit heading toward Monterey and Guerneville?
The fire is still burning above around Mount Jackson, coming down into Rio Neto, but is backing fire, which is allowing crews to get those lines constructed in front of that fire's edge before it gets to Rio Neto. So as long as the winds continue to burn, or correction, to blow in that southwest direction, it's actually pushing the fire away from downtown Guerneville and Rio Neto.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. I'll open it up for any other questions from the media at this time. I don't see any hands. I'll give it just one more minute. If you do have a question, please raise your hand in the chat and we'll go ahead and select. All right, here we go. We have Mary Callahan, another question. Please go ahead.
Can anyone give me an idea of sort of the distance west of 101? How many miles away is the fire from sort of the 101 corridor and these densely populated communities?
Without a map sitting in front of me, it'd be hard to give you an exact number, but roughly 3 miles for the average distance, possibly up to 5, depending on where it's at. Like I said, without a map, I couldn't give you an accurate number.
So we're talking about a dynamic fire and things that change and weather that's unpredictable and all of those things. But
hey, Mary, you're cutting out a bit.
Sorry. Can you hear me any better now?
Yep, there you go.
Absent a really extreme wind event, how seriously concerned are you about the 101 corridor communities?
Based on the fire conditions that we have seen to date, the spotting distance can be up to a half a mile, based on what the fire behavior analysts are telling us, and based on the fire conditions that we've seen throughout the week during the fire. We've had short range spotting that's been well under that distance. So currently with the fire conditions as they are, I am not overly concerned about the fire getting onto the east side of 101.
Chief
Thank
Kavanaugh,
you.
do you have something you want to add?
Well, I think to make sure I'm on me to add into that, the weather is always we try to protect the best we can with fire behavior and weather, but Mother Nature sometimes overrides the best history and education we've had. We've seen that over the last few years. We look at what the history does. If we have fire history in areas, some of this area has no fire history. But with that, I want to make it very clear for everybody that if we get a strong wind push in any direction, it can override sometimes our expectation that we have or the best calculations we have. So it's key for everybody to have themselves ready for those evacuation orders. As we saw here a couple nights ago, I wouldn't think that a grass fire would push down in Sonoma County and jump Interstate 80, and it did. So, I take everybody to, we talk about situational awareness. We have to have situational awareness all the time. Please, as a public, have your situational awareness and listen to those orders that we have.
I'm grateful for those words. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the questions, Mary. Next, we'll go to Rafael Vasquez. Rafael, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. This is Rafael Vasquez over at KBBF. The question is, how concerned should the residents be with these upcoming changes in the next 24 hours? Should we be more concerned about a large number of new fires that may develop based on the what you're seeing in the weather and what you may have seen previously?
Yes, and I'll answer that question. So as we've been looking, we have a lot of experts, a lot of weather folks that are giving us the best intel and forecasts that we can have. Sometimes those forecasts are very accurate, sometimes they're not. And most of the time we're hoping they're not when it comes to situations like this. But what we do know is the wind change has already taken place this afternoon. As we were talking earlier, as I was talking here just, within the last 40 minutes since we started, I said we've had that smoke inversion. Well, it just lifted while we've been talking and it's been sitting out there. We've got reports of heavy wind shifts all through the entire valley, clear over into the Calistoga area where we're at the base camp. So I'm getting told that the awnings over in some of the tents in Calistoga, our base camp, are having to be pulled in because the winds have now finally picked up. We were expecting that today. So we have to be concerned with those changing patterns. So one thing when it comes to wildland firefighting is we can do a lot. We can't override wind. And wind and topography mixed together with dry fuels, it's a tough thing. And so that's one thing we can't override is the wind. So we're concerned with that. We have to be, and we have to pre-plan for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. At this time, I don't see any other hands raised. If you do have a question, please raise your hand in the chat. All right, I don't see any more hands, so we'll go ahead and conclude the briefing. Please join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. We'll be doing another briefing tomorrow. Thank you all very much.